Now, I know they have Manifest Destiny shirts, and I'm wearing Invincible for this one, but I just haven't bothered to get one yet because a whole bunch of stuff. So, cut me some slack. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Comic Wall. It's your girl, the Outcast Angel, and today let's talk about issue 36 of Manifest Destiny. It's finally back with some sad news. Turns out, Manifest Destiny, or the team of Manifest Destiny, is also taking a break, not coming back until early 2019. So that sucks. Honestly, this has been one of my absolute favorite series, and I'm sad. But apparently that was because of some erraticness in the shipping process or something, and so they want to take a break to kind of reestablish that, and then come back in 2019 on steadier ground, as Sean says in the letters. And so, do what you got to do. Just come back strong, because I love this series, so don't let me down. Anyway, jumping in, we kind of get a glimpse as to the other side of when Lewis, Clark, and a small group of their fleet, or the Corps of Discovery, had been banished from their fort after Sergeant Pryor led a mutiny against them. And so, as we saw last issue, a group of Native Americans came with a hostage, which was Charbonneau, and he was naked again. And so they wanted to talk to Lewis and Clark. Instead, they got Sergeant Pryor, and Sergeant Pryor got an axe to the face. Yay. Anyway, this issue takes off directly after that, technically. I don't know. Okay, so we see Sergeant Pryor with the axe sticking out of his face, and Charbonneau looks the least surprised. And so the Native Americans leave, and Charbonneau is kind of telling them, they've decided to give you more time. They'll come back in a week, but they will only speak to Lewis and Clark. Anyone else will result in this. So, obviously, these guys know they're screwed. And they have no idea where Lewis and Clark are. But we do, because turns out this little group that had been banished from the fort had been surviving pretty well, I guess better than expected. I mean, it's in the middle of winter, and they tried to hunt. They've tried to keep eating as much as they can, but things are hard. Things have been hard, and it's been hard to keep the morale up. I mean, at one point they start to run out of food, and even Collins, which is who has become Clark's right hand man. He even says, we're running out of food. We took a chance following you out of that fort. And Clark tries to tell him, hey, be patient. But Collins continues saying, we knew we might die leaving the fort. I didn't know you'd be doing your best to ensure that happens. So things got tense. But Lewis seemed to kind of been calm throughout this whole thing. I mean, it seemed like he was biding his time. And at this point, we see why he was. Turns out he was waiting for one of the soldiers from the fort to come looking for them. And this soldier turns out to be, what is it? Well, Bennington, I guess. I don't think he exactly has a title. But Bennington comes saying, we've made a great mistake. And so we start to see that Lewis may have had a plan going on throughout this whole deal. So we jump back to the fort, where some of the men are coming back after trying to look for Lewis and Clark, and we see that the Native Americans are back, and the men start freaking out, and they want to send someone to go talk to them, which they try to send Jensen out there, because in one of the issues, I can't remember what it was. I think it may have been 35, 30. Yeah, it had to be 35. Jensen had volunteered to go instead of Pryor, but it was probably best that Pryor went first because he was the leader of this whole mutiny in the first place. But Jensen's not as brave anymore because uh, he's like, that was the last time. I'm not gonna go now after what we saw. And then they decide maybe they can give him a gift. But the other men are a little skeptical about that. But was it Jensen says no, like we'll give them a real tribute, whatever they want to call it. We'll give them York, and the other men are like, you can't just hand York over to them. And Jensen, I hate Jensen. He's such an asshole. And Jensen goes on to say, these savages are amazed by him. Why not? He's a slave. That's what you do to him. Granted, I know in real life this in real history this probably wouldn't have been the case, but one of the things I appreciate about this series is the humanity of it. You know, it kind of shows a different side of what history could have been. You know, but before they can really make a decision and before they can really freak out too much, Lewis and Clark write in to save the day. And this is one of the funniest scenes here because Clark says he hates writing behind Lewis like this, and Lewis is like, you're very valuable back there and you need to be able to draw and shoot at a moment's notice. But I just love the way they bicker at each other. Anyway, they go to talk to the natives, and turns out the native in the wolf hood is actually Sacagawea. She's the one who threw the axe at Pryor's head. And it's just, why is Charbonneau always naked? He always manages to find himself in the worst situations and without clothes. So it's horrible. Anyway, turns out when the group was banished from the fort in the first place, Sacagawea was set on, going back and attacking the fort. But Lewis and Clark didn't want to do that. They obviously needed their men, especially to finish this mission, but they wanted to do it in a different way. And so they went to talk to one of the nearby tribes, and Sacagawea kind of talked it through, but the natives obviously wanted something in return for their help. And so the rewards involved giving them their horse back, and for Lewis to give them his rifle. Now, that was surprising, considering the fact that, it took a while for the U.S. to kind of hand over guns to the natives as the westward expansion started going on. But turns out Lewis kind of had a plan for this as well. He said, Clark says, I have to say, I'm surprised you gave them your rifle. But Lewis says, I bent the sight, and if anyone takes a shot at us, we'll know where to find them. And as they're walking to the fort, the rest of the men let them in with open arms. But obviously not all is forgiven. And so Lewis and Clark line them up at attention, and they kind of talk through this. They say, like, this was a test of our core, of our strength and our resolve and our friendship. But we almost failed. And so you men need to appreciate, respect, and have faith in our leadership. And Clark continues to say, I, for one, have no use for mutineers, but I can understand how this happened. Most of you men have noble Christian intentions, and Pryor took advantage of that. And so Clark continues to say, while the Bible talks a great deal of mercy, it also mentions suffering. In it, there was one man chosen to suffer for all of mankind's sins. That is to be the case today, in which Clark picks out Jensen to come forward and take the brunt of the punishment for the rest of these men. And so he has one of the other men fetch the whip, and the reason why he chose Jensen is because the way he describes it, Pryor is no longer here which obviously he would have been the one to take the punishment. But Clark believes that the men would agree that Jensen was his second hand. So, while yeah, everyone else stepped stepped up to them, the reason why he's going to be whipped is mainly because of York. Because turns out Clark wants York to whip him. Now, this is surprising, consider the fact that history-wise, this would be completely wrong, I guess, you know, because obviously slaves didn't have the best, well, they didn't have any rights at all during this time. And so, you know, it's surprising seeing this turn of events in a story about history like this. But I appreciate it because it's almost like a kind of poetic justice, I guess. I don't know if I'm using that phrase right, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. And Jensen is freaking out by this. He's crying. He's obviously very embarrassed by this. And York takes one good swing at him, as we see here, but that's it. After that, he drops the whip at Clark's feet and says, "That's it." And Clark's like, "What's it? A single lash?" And Jensen's like, "That's all you want to give me?" And this scene gave me chills because York continues to say, "No, Mr. Jensen, I want to give you a lot more. I want to make this whip eat up the skin off your back the way I know it can. But everyone here has had enough of us all hurting one another, at least for today. But I want you to remember this. The mercy that I'm showing you. Mercy that I know you don't have for me." And so after that, York walks off, and Clark goes after him, saying, like, "Why would you let him off like this after all Jensen's done to you?" And turns out York has a very, very good reason for doing this. He describes how the men treat him like any other man out here, working, fighting, trying to live. If I do Jensen the way I wanted to, that changes. If I rip Jensen up, they look at me different. I'm not a man to them anymore. I'm just another animal that'll hurt them. They'll be afraid of me and hate me just like Jensen. There's enough out here trying to kill me from dead ahead. I don't need it coming up from behind me as well. And Clark agrees with this. And turns out, he asks, "Is there anything else I can do for you?" And York says, "As long as you keep your promise. After we get home, if we get home, you free me, like you promised." And Clark says, "Of course, I said I would, didn't I?" And the issue ends with York saying, "Yes, that's exactly what you said. Free." And we see the whip still at Clark's feet. And that's the end of this issue. And that was, that just gave me chills because of the fact that with York being one of the men having the most reason to want to hurt Jensen, and especially because I really wanted Jensen to eat that whip, he decided not to. In showing that he had the strongest will out of any man in this court, and that was just intense. And so while that was the end of this issue, I was actually lucky enough to get a letter printed in this issue as well, again. And so I start off with, "Hey guys, okay, this issue had me feeling all types of angry. I have to admit, when I read issues like this, I end up with this scowl on my face that stays until one of my friends mentions it, and it's quite embarrassing. I can't believe Pryor actually came into command of the fort. Then again, I absolutely hate how both Lewis and Clark left the fort at the same time. With a troop like theirs, I wouldn't trust anyone. I wouldn't trust any of them by themselves. They got a little caught up in dealing with Magdalene. She's a force to be reckoned with. You'll have to excuse them. Wait. I'm not sure if I wrote that. I can't believe... No, I don't think I wrote that. I think either Sean or Chris had written that, but it didn't show up in the bold. And so it says, they got a little caught up in dealing with Magdalene. She's a force to be reckoned with. You'll have to excuse them. And so I continue with, Anyway, I can't wait to see how Pryor eats it, and to see how Lewis and Clark come back from this. Blah 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 blah. And who is this? Oh, Sean ends with, "We'll give you new reasons to scowl next arc, but Pryor's death won't. Pryor's death has to be one of the most satisfying deaths in some time. That's what he gets for lack of loyalty." And Chris Dingess, the writer of the series, finishes with, "Yet Jensen slips through again. What the hell? Why do we keep letting him get away with the shit he pulls? When will he get his? Why am I complaining about it? I made him do it." Is this funny? Anyway, that's the end of this video. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys liked it, and if you did, drop a like, show the love, help a girl out, hit that subscribe button to get more of my videos, ring the bell to get notifications when I post new videos, so that way you guys stay updated and don't miss out. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.